You're late." As she pulled her luggage behind her, my mother's voice could be heard across the porch. I looked at my dashboard's clock. 6:02 a.m. 2 minutes. I forced a stiff smile and said, 2 minutes, Mom, before getting out of the van to assist her with her bags. Then I caught sight of her, Claire. Like a member of the royal family, my sister walked out of the house with her suitcase in tow. My stomach turned over. There was a problem. My smile wavered. "What's going on?" Mom turned to face me, her face too happy, too phony, like if she were preparing for a fight. She said, "Oh, sweetheart, too softly. Claire is going instead of you. She's been so stressed lately, and this trip will be good for her." I thought I misheard her for a moment. Instead of me? I felt a rush of chilly incredulity go over me. This vacation had been planned for years. To pay for it, I had put in extra hours. And I was being replaced as if I were a spare part? Mom, my tone changed. I paid for everything. I booked the hotels, the flights, the tours, dismissively. She waved her hand as if I were whining about the weather. "And we're so grateful, sweetheart," she said, sounding as phony as ever. "But you work so hard." "You can take another trip later. Claire needs this right now." Claire didn't even make an effort to appear guilty. Smirking, she leaned on the porch railing. She added, "Thanks for understanding, sis," with a phony sense of appreciation in her voice. I balled my fists and felt the heat creep up my neck. Then Dad showed up. I feel guilty, quiet, avoiding my gaze. He was also complicit. This was unthinkable. My voice trembled as I added, "This was supposed to be my trip, something for me to share with you." Mom always had a smile on her face. She cooed. "And it still is, sweetie, just with Claire instead. Don't make this a big deal. Your sister really needs a break." I gazed at them. I had worked extra hours for 2 years to provide the family with upscale lodging, flights, and exclusive tours. Every aspect was carefully thought out. By me. They were replacing me as if I were a goddamn afterthought. Claire didn't even say thank you before climbing into the back seat of my automobile. A truth that I had been ignoring for years suddenly struck me like a freight train. What I did didn't matter, how diligent I was. Claire would always come first to them. I made an effort to grin, chilly, emotionless. "Let's get going then," I remarked in a bland voice. "Okay, if they wanted Claire to take my place. On my conditions, though, they wouldn't like it." The airport drive was oppressive. As if this weren't the most heartbreaking betrayal of my life, Claire chattered endlessly while seated in the back seat. "Oh my God, Mom. Did you see that TikTok about Paris? One can't wait to go shopping. Do you think we'll have time, or will the tourist stuff take up the whole day?" My knuckles became white as I clamped down on the steering wheel. Mom's voice was calm and delighted as she laughed quietly. "Of course, honey. We'll figure it out when we get there. We. Not me. We." They were unaware that I was no longer a member of that we. Dad cleared his throat at one point, the initial indication of guilt. He said, "Thank you for driving us, Em," as he looked at me in the rearview mirror. "I know this probably feels unusual, strange." Did he pick that word? Not mean, not unjust. Strange. I stared at him blankly in the mirror. "Unusual," I said again in a hollow voice. "That's one way to put it, Dad." His body shifted uneasily. "Excellent." Claire's voice was annoying to my ears as she leaned forward. Her voice brimmed with phony worry as she questioned, "You're not mad, right? I mean, this is really big of you letting me go. I could never afford this on my own." As each poisonous syllable clawed its way up my throat, I tightened my teeth and forced it down. "Claire, of course. You couldn't afford it, of course. Because I earned it." I made an effort to grin, chilly, empty, flatly. "Enjoy the trip," I said. My patience had worn thin by the time we arrived at the airport drop-off area. Silently, I assisted them in unloading their bags. Mom gave me a kind hug as if she hadn't just broken my heart. She whispered, "Thank you for understanding, sweetheart. This means so much to us." And to Claire, "Yes, Mother." Claire threw a last grenade over her shoulder and smiled as she dragged her suitcase toward the terminal. "Thanks, Em. You're the best." Betrayal weighed heavily on my chest as I watched them vanish inside the airport. My automobile felt empty when I got back in. Empty. I could hear their voices in my mind. "Claire needs this right now. You're always working. You can go another time." I clutched the steering wheel as if it were the only thing keeping me in check as I turned into my driveway. Then, like a smack, I suddenly realized, instead they wanted Claire to go? All right. However, they wouldn't be taking special excursions or lodging in five-star hotels on my dime. I hurried inside, turned on my laptop, and signed into all of the travel accounts I had used to organize their ideal vacation. Reservations for a hotel? Canceled. Private excursions? Reimbursed. Upgrades to airline seats? Lost. Something in me relaxed as the confirmation emails poured into my inbox. In Paris, they could explain themselves to the receptionists. I had had enough of being a doormat. When their plane touched down, the calls began. I ignored them at first. As I unpacked the suitcase I had meticulously prepared for the trip, which was no longer mine, my phone began to buzz incessantly. As I put up the outfits I intended to wear while walking across Paris, one couldn't help but notice the irony. I had purchased the shoes especially for streets with cobblestones. The room was filled with an unrelenting vibrating and buzzing. With a sigh, I grabbed my phone and took a quick look at the screen. Mom. There were 18 missed calls. I went through the texts and scrolled. Mom, what's happening, Violet? We are unable to check in at the hotel. There is no reservation. Give me a call now. This isn't funny, Mom. Now fix this. I let out a sour, acrid laugh. Make this right? After what they had done, they really believed that I would intervene and save the day? Once more, the phone buzzed. Claire. Out of morbid curiosity, I let it ring and listened to her message. This is so petty, she yelled, her voice full of arrogance. We're stuck here because of you. You need to call the hotel and fix it. Now. I removed the message after rolling my eyes. I had been the fixer for years, the person who solves problems, the person who took up all the slack, fixed all the errors, and ensured that everything went without a hitch. No more. I finally made the decision to respond, if only to put an end to the flurry of calls. My mother's voice hit me like a tidal wave before I could even say hello. Violet, what did you do? The hotel says the reservation was canceled. None of the tours are booked anymore. I listened to her tirade for a while before answering. I spoke quietly, steady, unfazed. I canceled them. There was a lengthy moment of astonished quiet. Then there was a piercing hiss. Why would you do that? I let out a slow exhale, savoring the present. Oh, I don't know, I sarcastically responded. Maybe because you decided to take Claire on my trip? You're lucky I even drove you to the airport. She yelled. We thought you'd understand. I could feel a sour chuckle rising. I said, understand what? That my years of saving and planning didn't matter? That Claire needed a break more than I did? That my hard work meant nothing to you? Violet, don't be dramatic, click. I ended the call, and the ensuing silence seemed blissful for the first time in years. However, it was short-lived. The buzzing resumed the following morning. Makes calls, text messages, voicemails. One by one, I ignored them at first. I cleaned, caught up on work, and took back my workspace during the day. Curiosity prevailed by evening. Scrolling through the deluge of messages, I opened my phone. Mom, you've overreached yourself. Claire is crying. Your dad is mad. None of the hotels you reserved are accessible to us. Claire, your behavior is childlike. Why you're making such a huge deal out of this is beyond me. Just get things fixed already. Dad, we must speak. This is incorrect. I shook my head and put the phone down. I had been the one to make things right for years, to ensure that everyone else was content and comfortable. They were unsure of what to do now that I had taken a back seat. I let the rage stew while I poured myself a cup of tea. They have no right to expect me to tidy up their mess. How could they pretend that I was at fault? Minutes later, there was another call. I responded this time. Violet, Mom yelled angrily before I could say anything. This isn't funny anymore. We're stranded. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? I sipped my tea slowly, enjoying the moment. I thought, embarrassing? You think this is embarrassing? Try saving for years, planning every detail, only to be told you're not even part of the trip you paid for. Stop being so dramatic, she yelled. Claire needed this more than you. And now, I asserted, she can figure it out. Violet, we're family. We don't do this to each other. I let out an irritated laugh. Funny, Dad. I was just thinking the same thing. Isn't family supposed to respect each other? Stick together? Because it sure doesn't feel like you've been holding up your end. I could hear Claire complaining in the background. Mom, just hang up on her. She's being impossible. That was it. The last straw. I tightened my hold on my phone and spoke in a stern, unforgiving tone. Enjoy your trip. I ended the call. I didn't switch off my phone this time. I wanted the call to go unanswered for them. I was at peace for the remainder of the evening, not guilty. I have no regrets, only relief. I was finished. It was quiet in my world for the first time in years. No favors at the last minute. No coerced sacrifices. No going out of your way to make their lives simpler. I had freedom. God, it was a pleasant feeling. Over the next few days, I took back my time. I genuinely relished the quiet of my own house, took long walks, and binge-watched my favorite shows. I knew it wouldn't last, though. Curiosity prevailed by the third day. I switched my phone back on, half anticipating and half dreading the deluge of texts that would be waiting for me. I didn't feel let down. I had more than a dozen voicemails in my mailbox. I began with Mom's. Violet, you need to call me back right now. This has gone too far. I can't believe you did this. You've humiliated us. We're your parents. How could you treat us this way? I removed all of them. Claire's comes next. This is so petty. Even for you. You're ruining everything. Just fix it, Violet. Remove. And lastly, Dad. Violet, I don't understand what's happened to you. Call us back so we can sort this out. Take care of this. As though there had been a small miscommunication. As if I hadn't been the backup plan, the afterthought, and the person who was always expected to make sacrifices for years. I also erased his message. I sat down at the kitchen table, poured myself a cup of tea, and took it all in. They had to clean up their own mess for once. Their safety blanket was no longer me, and it would never be me again. The doorbell rang just as I was getting settled for the evening. I recognized the person, Grace. Her countenance was a mixture of surprise and hardly disguised laughter as she entered the room holding 2 hot cups of coffee. She remarked, "Your mom called me yesterday." She put down the drinks. She did, of course. Mom had been a cunning manipulator throughout her life. She would find someone else to guilt-trip me back into line if she couldn't reach me directly. I rubbed my temples and moaned. And? The sneer on Grace's lips played as she shrugged. I told her you were probably busy and that you'd get back to her when you were ready. I gave a snort. You're the best. No, she clarified, her voice becoming softer. You're the best. I know how difficult it is to stand up for yourself at last, Violet. Don't let them bring you down again. Long after she was gone, her words remained with me. She was correct. I had lived my whole life trying to win their acceptance. For what purpose? To be thrown out the moment Claire demanded what I had earned? Not anymore. I felt something I hadn't felt in years by the weekend. Clarity. Still seething beneath the surface was the rage, but something even more powerful tempered it. Liberty. The silence was short-lived, of course. My phone buzzed once more on Sunday afternoon. I responded this time. Violet, Dad said, his voice sluggish with fatigue. Your mom wanted me to call. She thinks you'll listen to me. Proceed, Dad. I waited while leaning back in my chair. His tone was filled with frustration as he let out a sigh. Look, this has all gotten out of hand. Your mom's upset, Claire's furious. And well, it's just a mess. But you're better than this. My stomach turned over. Better than what, Dad? I said in a tone that was dangerously composed. Standing up for myself? Refusing to be your doormat again? That's not what I meant, he spoke hastily, now on the defensive. It's just you've always been the reasonable one, the one who keeps everything together. This isn't like you, I chuckled. Brief. Bitter. You're right. It's not like me. Because for the first time, I'm not bending over backward to clean up your mess. A long pause ensued. I had a brief moment of hope that he might finally comprehend. Then he said once more, Violet, we're family. Can't you just let this go? And there it was. They had always used the same justification. Give it up. Give Claire what she wants. Allow Mom to change the past. Give them another chance to trample me. I inhaled deeply and slowly. I answered, No, Dad, in a stern voice. I can't let this go. Maybe you and Mom need to finally understand that actions have consequences. And this? This is yours. I hung up before he could answer. I was completely guilt-free this time around. I was waiting for my parents and Claire when they returned from their dreadful trip. Not at my house, not near my phone, not in a frantic attempt to win their favor. I was enjoying a cup of coffee while observing the sunrise from their front porch. When the cab arrived, I watched them get out, dragging their bags like survivors of a war, fatigued and agitated. It was Claire who spoke first. Well, I hope you're happy, Violet. Despite raising an eyebrow, I remained sitting, composed, and untouchable. Happy about what? Mom, frustrated, threw up her hands. The trip was a disaster. I took another sip of coffee and said, "Oh? We spent the entire week in dingy hotels, eating terrible food because we couldn't afford anything decent." She yelled. And don't even get me started on the tours. Oh, wait there, WERENT. Do you know how embarrassing it was to show up and be told there was no reservation? Claire asked, crossing her arms and giving me a fierce look. I nearly felt guilty. Nearly. Rather, I let their grievances to drift past me like background noise. Sounds rough, I finally responded in a level voice. But you wanted to take Claire, remember? I'm sure you all had some great bonding time. Mom was upset about that. She yelled. That isn't the point. You knew we couldn't afford all the things you planned. You set us up to fail. I put down my coffee and carefully got to my feet. No, Mom, I responded in a firm, unwavering voice. I didn't set you up for anything. I planned a trip for us. Something special. Something I worked hard for. And you made the choice to cut me out at the last second. When Dad did speak, it was in a subdued but accusing tone. You didn't have to cancel everything, Violet. That was extreme, was it? I asked, cocking my head. Why should I pay for a trip I wasn't even invited to? If Claire needed it so badly, maybe you should have planned it yourselves. You're lucky I didn't cancel the return flight. Claire gave an eye roll. You're so dramatic, Violet. It's just money. And that's when I lost my temper. With icy eyes, I turned to face her. And you're so entitled, Claire. Do you have any idea how much work, how much sacrifice went into planning that trip? Or do you just assume things magically appear for you because someone else takes care of it? Quiet. She had nothing to say, for once. I gave them time to process what I had said, and to consider the consequences of their own decisions. Mom opened her mouth at last. That's not fair, I interrupted her by raising a hand. No, Mom. What's not fair is how you treated me. You chose Claire over me, like always. So I chose to stop being your doormat. You didn't want me on the trip? Fine. But you don't get to enjoy the benefits of my hard work without me. I turned to go after grabbing my luggage from the porch swing. Over my shoulder, I murmured, I'm glad you're back safely, but don't expect things to go back to the way they were. I'm done. They were calling after me as I made my way to my car. Furious. I feel guilty. I'm frustrated. However, I didn't turn around. I didn't care for once. It felt different on the way home. Lighter. Every encounter with them exhausted me for years. Every visit left me feeling bare, worn out, and caught between desiring their love and feeling resentful of their lack of regard for me. However, this time, I was liberated. I made a cup of tea, put my keys down, and entered my home. And I breathed for the first time in a long time. After a week, my phone began to vibrate. Mom, I considered ignoring it for a moment. However, I didn't, I replied. Hi, Violet, she said in an unusually gentle voice. How was your trip? I paused for a moment. It was amazing. She let out a sigh and paused as if she was considering what to say next. We've been thinking a lot about what happened. Maybe we handled things poorly. I arched an eyebrow. Perhaps? Poorly? I repeated. Mom, you replaced me on a trip I planned and paid for without even asking me. Poorly is an understatement. I know, she said candidly. Your dad and we didn't realize how much it would hurt you, I said. And Claire? Does she feel bad too, or is she still blaming me for ruining her vacation? Mom paused. She's upset, she said. But I think she knows she could have handled things better. I leaned on the counter and sighed. Mom, this isn't just about the trip. It's about years of putting her first and expecting me to pick up the slack. I'm not doing it anymore. She remained silent for a while. Finally, then I understand. I blinked. She went on. We're going to try to do better. We don't want to lose you. I felt a tug inside. I'd longed to hear that for ages. However, I was aware that words were just that, words. I'm glad to hear that, I answered cautiously. But it's going to take more than words to fix this. I need to see real effort, not just apologies. You will, she assured him. We'll give you the space you need, but I hope you'll let us back in someday. After the call ended, I felt not comfort, not joy, but something near the end. In the months that followed, I maintained my boundaries. When I felt like it, I answered calls and SMS. I no longer fixed things for them. I concentrated on myself instead. I enrolled in a class on photography, something I had never had time to do but had always wanted to do. I joined a hiking club in my area. My next vacation was planned. I felt like I was regaining a part of myself with every stride I took. As I watched the sunset from my porch one evening, I came to a realization. I wasn't the type to go out of my way for folks who no longer valued me. I was a self-reliant person who established limits, who didn't hesitate to leave. In my life, for the first time, I had freedom. I was not going back either.